I started stuttering when I was about 5 years old. I remember being in kindergarten, and I was trying to answer a question, and I wasn't able to get the words out.
I realized that I stuttered since I can remember speaking, which was about when I was 4 years old.
Every moment that I, tried to open my mouth when I was younger felt like a risk. It felt like I was making a decision whether I wanted to risk being embarrassed. But
it was different that I didn't know people or see people who stuttered. So I was just like navigating this really difficult thing by myself, and then just the fact that it's hard to talk, and at a young age that's very difficult.
So I had a moment in my childhood, and I remember it very clearly. I was returning a softball mitt, probably at the age of 12 or 13 years old, and they asked me for my name, and I could not say my name. And my best friend had to jump in and say my name, and that was sort of the moment that I realized that I did in fact have a problem, and I was a person who stuttered.
I went through was feeling really alone. I didn't feel like I had anybody else to go to. I didn't understand it myself. I didn't have anybody else that sounded like me. So I just didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do other than that I felt different, and I felt really isolated from everybody else.
I started to stutter when I was about 3 years old, something that runs in my family. But I didn't really know many people outside of my family who stuttered, which really, in retrospect, was a really lonely experience.
For me, it was about when you were in class and the teacher would ask a question and you knew the answer, but you weren't going to raise your hand and say the answer because you knew you couldn't say it.
It put me in a very dark place. I felt like an outsider compared to everyone else. I would get called on in class and just stand there and not be able to say anything.
The idea of having to order in restaurants and basic mundane things that people take for granted, I think, were a constant source of anxiety for me.
Very difficult in the sense that I knew for some reason I kind of spoke differently from my other peers.
Sometimes I'm the kid that doesn't get invited to the birthday parties or gets, invited to do all the fun things that your friends are. So
I discovered it, I think an early memory is we're rewatching Christmas videos, or I think it was a birthday home video, and really hearing that I was repeating words and that I sounded very different from my family. And
every time you get called on, you start sweating, your heart starts to kind of beat out of your chest. You have a lot of things that you want to say, but for some reason your mouth won't work with your body and get the things out.
Oftentimes, I get very anxious, and when I'm anxious, it feels like the world is ending. It's so hard to say what I have to say.
Just the fact that it's hard to talk, and at a young age, that's very difficult.
Realize that you would rather be alone and than have a lot of friends who were really mean.
Identifying with being a stutterer. I think a lot of people are so afraid to do that because I think we don't want to feel like we have a disability or we have something wrong with us. So sometimes the hardest step is saying I'm a person who stutters and not thinking that that is a weakness. And so I think it's just about knowing that you're strong, knowing that because you have a stutter doesn't mean that you are not strong, that you can't be successful, and that there is this community that'll help you not only just like survive, but thrive and really live the life that you want to live with a stutter and be as successful as you've ever dreamed. I started doing group therapy now, I think like a year and a half ago, where every other week we meet as a larger group. It's more like an arts group, I think it's called. And yeah, like it's an incredible place where we hold each other accountable for our goals, or we help each other work through things that are coming up, like presentations, or, you know, I just got married. They, you know, had helped me when I was nervous to do vows. And it's just this place where you are each other's ally. And yeah, like when you stutter or you open stutter, we're all celebrating each other, not being like, oh no, you stuttered, that didn't sound nice. You know, we're just really always celebrating. And yeah, you see the progress, and you just see the confidence week over week because you have this allyship and you have this group of friends.
The misconceptions of stuttering is that you're stuttering because you don't know what you're talking about, that you talk too fast and your brain can't keep up with you, and it really has nothing to do with that.
So my stutter is a little bit of an interesting case, and by the way, no two stutters are the same. Everyone stutters uniquely.
We like to say that when you've met one person who stutters, you've met one person who stutters. It's something that can dramatically affect someone in one situation where another person who stutters might be completely fluent.
Stuttering is a neurological disorder that's hereditary, or if you stutter, you probably have had someone related to you stutter, whether you know it or not. And it's something then, as I started to get older and start a family, that I was very concerned about whether or not my children would stutter, because obviously you want your kids to have the most successful life as they can.
Often people believe that stuttering is triggered by nervousness, or that a person has a specific emotional or mental health difficulty. And while thoughts and feelings make stuttering harder to deal with and can negatively impact a person's experience with stuttering, that is not the cause of stuttering.
I think growing up, I always thought that I would outgrow it. I think a lot of people, I think a really big misconception of stuttering is that you outgrow it or that it goes away, because in some people it does. So I always just figured it would go away, or because mine is not constant.
Throughout my life, I think I've been sort of misunderstood as being chronically nervous or shy. And, you know, a lot of that is really kind of self-imposed, trying to stay as small as possible and not reveal this part of me that for a long time I was so ashamed of.
Misconceptions that has affected me, again, is the fact that people think that you're not as educated or as thoughtful as everybody else.
We know with confidence that stuttering runs in families. We know that it's a genetic trait most of the time that can skip generations in some families, and it can be very prevalent in other families.
There's no cure for stuttering. If there were a magic pill that I could be prescribed and take, and it would make my stutter go away, but it would also make all of the lessons go away that I have learned from stuttering and all of the gifts that it has given me.
Genetic trait that is neurological and biological and not triggered by nervousness. In fact, we'd have a lot more people who stutter if it was triggered by something as simple as nervousness.
This experience where when you walk into a situation for the first time or a conversation for the first time and you realize, you know, this person may or may not understand what stuttering is. They might not get it. And so because of that, you know, they might look curious. They might look a little bit put off. They might even look disgusted that there's something going on that doesn't seem to make sense.
So one of the things in my professional life that was very frustrating for me is I am a chief client officer in a very high pressurized industry in the legal world, and where everyone speaks perfectly. And I always had a seat at the table because I did speak up. But what was happening is that we would be strategizing about something, and I would have a great idea or a great way to approach something, but I knew the words that I wanted to use would make me stutter, and so I wouldn't say anything. Then, of course, the man next to me would then say the exact same thing, not as good as I would have said it, and everyone thinks it's the best idea they've ever heard.
I had been asked to give some presentations at work, and it was a relatively new job for me. I had only been there for 2 months when the pandemic happened, and I had been putting on this facade that I was a highly fluent person, and I kept being asked to step up and present and speak in front of larger groups, even on Zoom. That's completely daunting for a person who stutters. And I was losing weekends to thinking about it. I was losing so much peace, and all I was thinking about was which words could I swap out for synonyms, and it was creating a lot of internal conflict for me.
And so that was a real catalyst for me about how I better get the confidence I need to stutter with confidence so I can progress in my career and not let others take the limelight when I know what I'm talking about. When I discovered AIS, I all of a sudden realized that there are these amazing therapies and things that actually work, that I would have loved to have had the opportunity to work with someone like Heather in AIS when I was younger. And so if now I can bring my experiences to AIS from a personal perspective and a business perspective to help impact a child's life or a parent that's raising a child, then there's nothing better for me. And I'm thankful I have a stutter because now I can use what I've been through to help and empower others.
I started grad school and I started my full-time job. And for so long, I was trying to fix my stutter with just, kind of myself. And I would, go in and like practice words, 500 times. I'd try and say my name 500 times. But for some reason, I just couldn't figure this thing out.
People feel understood. And so we spend a lot of time trying to understand the nature of stuttering so that when a person meets with us for the first time, they feel like we get it.
Combination of being told repeatedly that this thing is okay, this thing that you were kind of ashamed of and you didn't want to talk about it, is not something that's your fault or that makes you bad.
At AIS, I feel like I'm able to navigate those situations so much easier.
Found AIS during 2020 and had emailed them for literally a year, asking, what it would cost, asking all the things, and just kept putting it off. I had a really bad presentation at work where I blocked and I stuttered the entire time, and I was depressed for a very long time, and finally decided that I could take matters into my own hands, and finally bit the bullet and had my first session with AIS and just have not looked back since. It completely changed my life.
And I walked in and I felt like for the first time, it sounds so simple, but I was asked, what does it feel like to stutter? And I realized that was the first time that a therapist, people who are here to help and to assist, actually wanted my input on my own experience. They didn't have an agenda. They didn't have this idea in their head of this is what stuttering is and we're going to fit you into this mold. It was really wanting to learn about my own experience.
I started to just go online and type in stuttering help in New York City. And then AIS popped up, and it opened up a whole new kind of possibility for me about what is possible with my speech.
And I think to learn that repeatedly every day over the course of 3 weeks, it's like you slowly start to go outside and you're like, maybe I don't need to be so ashamed of this. And this weight kind of comes off your shoulders.
I think I would love to thank AIS for finding the beauty in stuttering and for finding the beauty in people that stutter. There are so many speech therapists out there that try to fix or change, or they do these intensive workshops where if you're not cured in 2 weeks, you're not cured, and harp on that and harp on it being a weakness. And AIS harps on it being a strength, and AIS helps you find your best self.
Therapy taught me too is that I wasn't seeking to overcome my stutter. I was really seeking to overcome my fear of stuttering.
So as specialists, we have dedicated our career to understanding the nature of stuttering and helping people walk the walk of accepting stuttering as part of who they are. It can be a small part, but a part of their true selves.
What AIS has taught me to do is kind of be more open and understanding to what your phones are, and just to be more easier on yourself. So if you're in a high stressed environment, like it's helpful if you just kind of ground yourself and understand that it's a high stress peaking environment, and if you stutter, it's okay. You just have to focus on what you said and if the other person understood what you said.
My life has improved in every single way since working with AIS. A couple of really critical things that I learned in therapy very early on was just educating myself about my stutter. My stutter presents in the form of what's called blocks, meaning that you get stuck on saying the word or putting any noise to the word. And I didn't even understand that that was an avoidance technique, and I was doing that because I was trying not to stutter.
As stuttering specialists, we have to understand that no two people who stutter are created the same, and the therapy has to be truly individualized.
I'm so passionate about AIS because growing up through my adolescence, through my teen years, and into adulthood, I did not have someone that I could talk to or a therapist that I could work with to talk to them about my stutter.
I did not address my stutter, talk about my stutter openly, accept my stutter, or seek treatment until I was 34 years old.
Well, the biggest thing is that it's okay to stutter, and then just kind of how to cope with stuttering, how to work through difficult blocks, how to take that struggle away, which is a big thing, because there's a lot of struggle in stuttering.
In therapy, ultimately what we're trying to do is help a person feel more okay with their stuttering, to help them feel safe, that when it happens, it doesn't have to be super meaningful, it doesn't have to be a moment of physical struggle, and it doesn't have to be something that is going to trigger a specific problem. There are very few specialists in the area of stuttering, and so truly all people who stutter are considered underserved throughout the world, really, because there are just so few specialists. At AIS, we go the extra mile to offer financial assistance so that regardless of where you come from, regardless of how much money your family has, our therapy is accessible to everyone.
There's so many individuals out there who are not able to access the kind of therapy that they need. You know, stuttering is a very specific kind of part of our field. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there, even amongst the field of speech-language pathology. And I find that we're able to reach people who aren't able to access the therapy that actually can change lives.
Insurance coverage is really poor when it comes to stuttering. There's a checkered history with that, and so many years ago we formed a nonprofit so that we can help make this therapy affordable and accessible to everyone.
I think we can reach more people. We can make sure that, you know, the barriers and red tape of insurance, of funding, of coverage is not a prohibitive wall for people who are really struggling and really need the support from a community that understands them.
So after launching in New York City in the 90s, we now have an office open in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as in Los Angeles, California, and we're eager to continue that growth. So with the support of donors, we're able to expand the financial assistance that we offer, as well as open offices in new states. I had the privilege of seeing people come into therapy struggling with things like public speaking in school and walking alongside them as they little by little develop confidence and the self-acceptance to stand up in front of a crowd and say what they want when they want to say it.
It's really important to be a stuttering ally, and you can do that in a couple of different ways. One of them is to support the organization financially, and another way to be a stuttering ally is to make sure that you are maintaining eye contact with someone while they're stuttering, to kind of stop the urge to finish their sentences. That's another way to simply support people who stutter and be a stuttering ally.
I think we need to help each other because we know what it feels like to be alone in something. And with stuttering, you don't see it very often, but when you do, it is extremely impactful. And so when you can talk to someone that's been through something similar, it's all about community and how you can help benefit each other, and you're not alone.
The most important thing in life is to be kind to others and to yourself. And AIS is, that's kind of their motto, I think.
Now that I've come to therapy, I'm not gonna lie, I still have a lot of challenging days with my speech, but I'm okay with those days that I struggle with my stutter because I have this support group through like AIS and my therapist and my group therapy where now I can go to people, I can talk it out, and I can use the tools that I've learned in therapy to be the best version of myself.
I believe strongly that everyone deserves to be happy and to feel connected and loved. And people who stutter struggle with this sometimes. They can feel excluded and apart from the crowd. And it's wonderful to spend time in my career helping people feel more connected and loved by talking about stuttering, demystifying it with their friends, and learning to take the risks that they thought they couldn't take previously.
I'm able to say what I want to say. I'm able to be who I want to be, and I'm able to understand that stuttering can be a part of me, but it doesn't have to overwhelm me. It doesn't have to stop me from living the life that I want to live.
A community to lean on when I have hard days or I have big presentations coming up. I have a text chain, I have email chains with people that really hold me up. And so I think that sense of a friendship is something I've been searching for 34 years, and I finally have it because of AIS.
And I think that now I'm sort of on this journey of reversing that tendency and kind of embracing just being myself. But it's a long, hard journey.
What change looks like, what progress looks like, where you can finally get the job you want, you can have the relationship you want, you can order the food you want, you can do so many different things and choices that I can finally feel it's the greatest blessing of my life.
I'd like to thank AIS for giving me the opportunity to grow, not only as a person who stutters, but as a person altogether. I feel like I've learned so much from the entire team at AIS, and it's helped me advance in my job. I'm able to speak very openly. This is my first time ever doing an interview, so there's that. But yes, I just want to say thank you for all the help. I
think something that people have been trying to feel unalone their entire lives, and so when AIS can provide this community to others, it really blows the doors off of, I think, what you can do in your life and the confidence that you have to make a difference.
The thing that often hits me at the end of the day is I helped someone feel understood today. And sometimes I can recognize that person hasn't felt understood in a long time.
Yeah, so for 15 years I was trying to solve this thing by going on YouTube videos and trying to repeat words 500 times, trying to fix my stutter. But now that I've come to AIS, I have a group of people that support my stutter, and they have showed me that I can accept it because it's a special part of me and I don't have anything to hide.
Well, I definitely stopped running from difficult situations. I wouldn't hide a lot. I wouldn't talk, and now I'm talking more. I'm doing more things that scare me. I just went on a job interview today, which I would never have done like 2 years ago. So just like they've taught me like how to just live my life